Welcome to another unscripted, upfront, in-your-face Junius Maltby channel where we extemporaneously speak and go about looking at the headlines that surround us and everyday news. Well, let's get right down to it. Yeah, gold's been making some movements. I kind of stepped away from the computers for a few days. Gold's bull markets in Europe and Japan remain unnoticed. I'm not going to go over the whole article here, just a couple of charts on that headline. But if you look at some charts, gold is currently in the yen only 7% below its high. And if you look at that chart there, it's really still in an upward trend, upward trajectory. Took a little bit of dip there and then back in 2013 and has been steadily climbing out of it since then. So gold's been going up in other currencies. We're seeing that. And that's all part of this whole deflationary currency wars we've talked about at numerous times in other Junius Maltby channel broadcasts. So let's take a look here. Current price in euros. Yeah, it took quite a dip there in 13, but bottomed out right around 2014 and has been climbing steadily out of that trough as well. So gold's been doing pretty good. If you purchased gold in euros and you're in Europe, and you're watching this from your little table or chair in Europe, well, if you bought in the last year, you're sitting pretty well at this point. It's up, and I believe it could potentially go quite higher than this. So we'll see. You know, only time will tell, as they say. Gold holds its biggest gain since January, as data on U.S. employment added to speculation that the U.S. Federal Reserve may delay raising borrowing rates. We've talked about that. Yeah, they're not raising interest rates, borrowing rates, because we're a debtor nation. We can't do it. As soon as they do that, it's going to cause problems. Even though it is likely the right thing to do, we can't have easy credit, free money, and just zero interest forever. It's detrimental. We did a whole video on this in the past on how it's destroying savers and robbing from those on fixed incomes. But you've heard my piece on that already. Gold poised to continue higher. SPX 500 waiting for direction cues. A lot of predictions about gold going higher. Foreign gold held on deposit at the New York Fed and the monthly change in tons. Now this is a headline that I'm going to show you after this slide here. That's the total foreign gold held on deposit. So we've talked about the Germans taking their gold, the Dutch, and you've heard of all these nations over the last 2 years requesting their gold. They want their foreign gold, their physical gold that's held at the Fed. And you can see that it's basically starting in 06, in 07, there's been a withdrawal or a depletion of foreign gold. And it looks like now that gold in the Fed vault has dropped under 6,000 tons for the first time after the 10th consecutive month of redemptions. So for some reason, emphasis on for some reason, there are nations requesting delivery, requesting their physical gold. Now, at a time where we see currency crisis and currency wars, conflicts sprouting up around the globe, whether in the Middle East or in the Ukraine, we hear rumors of wars and trade wars. It's no wonder that nations want their physical gold. Why? Safety, safe haven. The same reasons that you or I own it. We could talk forever on that alone. But the London Bullion Market Association has announced a sharp decline in its gold and silver trading activities during February. Why would gold and silver trading activity drop? So my brief uninformed theory on why gold and silver are not being traded as readily is that there's a possibility that not only is it supply constricted, but that people are holding it and waiting, these individuals, these investors, these major funds, for significant price rises. We've seen metals take quite a beating in the last year or so, and I think a theory is a lot of these individuals that are holding large amounts of the metal know that it's artificially low at this point and that the price is going to rise, and that's the time in which they would put their metals more readily available on the market for sale. Just a theory, probably totally wrong or off, but take it for what it's worth. Look at the dollar lately. Dollar's dropped on speculation, economic data pushback, and rate timing. We're talking about, again, the rates, interest. Now we're going to look at some employment numbers for the United States. Americans not in the labor force soar to record 93.2 million as participation rate drops to February 1978 levels. What was going on in February 78? Well, in the 70s, as you all know, under Carter, there was quite the recession in the United States. So what this tells me is I kind of think and believe, and I think a lot of you guys would concur on this, that the recession we experienced is not over, and we've talked about this before. There has not been the recovery. It's all been smoke and mirrors up until this point, and the economy is still quite unhealthy. Just because the Dow's hitting records does not mean the economy is better. Labor force participation rate, look at that. It's plummeting. That's percentage of the population. So again, lowest since 1978. This is people not in the labor force in thousands, measured in thousands. So since 1990, we've seen a steady increase in the amount of people not in the labor force. Okay, that just creates a burden on the entire economy as a whole. Let's move up to Canada, north of the border. Why Canada's economy is headed off a cliff. We've covered Canada quite a few times. We've made videos on their housing crisis, or the potential, I guess I should say, of a housing crisis up there and what could be coming. So if you're Canadian, tune in. Please add your comments and let us know what your perspective is and what you guys are seeing and what prices are like, what the economy's like. What are your observations? In this Looney Tune, it seems our crazy Canadian coyote has run off the cliff. His feet are still moving, but he has yet to look down. Here's a couple of reasons of why they believe, the writer of this article, the Canadian economy is potentially headed off a cliff. I'm not going to read the entire article, but there are some good little pieces in here. Canada is in the midst of an unprecedented housing boom that seems likely to bust. I was recently in Canada and noticed a schizophrenic oscillation between housing exuberance and oil price despair. But let's move on to first. Household credit. The seemingly conservative Canadian population has been voraciously consuming debt at a breakneck pace. Total household debt, 1.82 trillion Canadian dollars, now exceeds the GDP of 1.6 trillion. Approximately 1.3 trillion of which was for residential mortgages. Second, housing prices, home prices, continue their basically uninterrupted rise that began in the mid to late 1990s. Third, crude oil. The impact of lower oil prices is rippling through the economy at breakneck speed. Since 2011, Alberta, the oil-rich home of the oil sands, was responsible for more than 50% of all jobs created in Canada. We've talked about this with the collapse of oil prices and what's been going on in that market. It could have some detrimental effects on the Canadian economy. So we'll see where that ends up, what happens. But in summary, we've looked at today, and it looks like we're still bullish on gold. Things are doing well in that realm. Yep, nations are demanding gold to be physically delivered, and Canada could be facing some economic crisis. So that's going to wrap up today's conversation on the most boring channel on YouTube, the Junius Maltby channel. Thanks for tuning in, joining the channel. Go ahead and look around on the channel while you're here. If this is your first time here, you might want to play some catch up and go check out some of the other videos and topics and news stories we've covered in the past. There's some good material down there for you. And feel free to dig around and watch things as they appeal to you. And check out the speeches and writings of some of the economic minds that I do respect, and just some good material that we've included here on the channel. Alright, thanks for being here as usual, and have a good day.